Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Goodwin with the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. Welcome to this week's History is Lunch program. We're in our home, the Craig H. Nielsen Auditorium in the Museum of Mississippi History and Mississippi Civil Rights Museum. And we're streaming live on both Facebook and YouTube, where these videos are available to watch anytime afterward. And if you've not already done so, please silence your phones. In commemoration of the 60th anniversary of Freedom Summer, with support from Higher Purpose Company, these museums will offer free admission Friday, May 31st through Sunday, June 2nd. And when you're here, remember to see the temporary exhibit of flags from the MDH collection upstairs in the FedEx Exhibition Hall. And I hope you'll come back next week for History's Lunch, when we'll be joined by Noah Satterstrom and Stephen Parks, who will present What Became of Dr. Smith, A Life Rediscovered, about Satterstrom's exhibit at the Mississippi Museum of Art. And after History's Lunch, Noah will lead a free gallery tour there for anyone interested. We have not had one of these split programs in several years. I think Peter Miazza led a tour of Greenwood Cemetery for us after a History's Lunch years ago. But we'll have the regular History's Lunch, and then for anybody who wants to, 15 minutes or so after that, Noah will lead a tour of the new exhibit at the Art Museum. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Ben Fatherree to present The Origins of the Mississippi Community College System. Ben Fatherree is the retired chair of the Department of History at Hinds Community College's Raymond campus, where he taught for more than 30 years. He earned his PhD, MA, and BA degrees in history from Mississippi State University. Fatherree has been a visiting scholar at the Hoover Institution on War, Revolution, and Peace at Stanford University, and a National Endowment for the Humanities Fellow at Columbia University. He's the author of A Century of Service, Hinds Community College, 1917 to 2017 and Beyond, and 2 books on the Waterways Experiment Station in Vicksburg. Help me welcome Ben Fatherree.
Thank you. Oops. Ow. Thanks. Well, that reminds me, I had a pretty serious wreck a few months ago and still having a little hip trouble. And I usually tell people that I've got $6,000 lenses in my eyes. I've got $3,500 hearing aids. I've got a titanium hip. I can't see, I can't hear, and I limp. But I'm still here, you know, and once again, something I often tell, I'm a cancer survivor. I've been struck by lightning. I fractured my skull 3 times, and I've been poisoned in Russia and was afraid I was going to die in a Russian hospital. Anyhow, I retired as chair of the history department at Hinds. I was finishing my master's degree at that great institution in Starkville. You know that one. I was broke. I had no money, and I wrote one letter to Hinds Junior College at the time. By the way, if you ever who went to a junior college? Yeah. If you ever went to a junior college, worked at a junior college, what are you going to call it? Junior college, not community college, which is a much better term. I wrote one letter, and I said at that time that if I got that job, I would work there at Hinds for 1 year and save enough money to go back to graduate school. After a year, I was deeper in debt than I was. 32 years later, I retired, and it was a great job. First thing I want to do is thank a lot of people. I want to thank all of you for being here today, and Mr. Smith. Okay, would you stand up and introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Kel Smith. I'm the current executive director of Community College Board in Jackson. It's my pleasure to be here. Looking forward to your presentation.
Well, thank you. I hope I can teach you some things. There are too many people here to thank, but first I want to thank my wife. You can stand up if you want to. Some people think she's better looking than I am. And she saved my life a few times, and I owe her a great deal. Chris, okay, I want to thank Chris, and like I said, there's so many other people. Marshall Bennett, he was elected state treasurer 4 times, but he quit, went to New York, and got rich. But but he's back, and I see so many familiar. Where's John Maxwell? Ugh. Okay, I wrote a book, and the background of it is that I retired from teaching full time. I had 32 years in state retirement, which means I've gotten 23 13th checks. I worked for the Corps of Engineers in Vicksburg for 2 years. I'd already written 2 books for them. If you ever have insomnia, read my history of geotechnical engineering. It's actually very interesting. I came back to Hinds teaching adjunct, and I got the idea. I went to Dr. Muse, the president. You all know Dr. Muse. He was president from 1978 until 2020. A great man, and I had the privilege of working for him. I don't agree with everything he did, but I couldn't ask for better. And I went to him and I said, we need a full-scale history of the college, and not just the college, but the whole system. And he thought that was a great idea and put me on a part-time contract. What I didn't tell him was that I intended to end it with his retirement. And I figured, he would work another 5, 6 years, and that would give me, that was 2005. And finally, I just said, I got to quit. He's going to outlive me. And I eventually said, this is going to be a centennial history, and the centennial of the school was 2017. Really the spring of 2018, so that's where we're going to go. And if he's still here, great. If not, I still quit. And what I tried to do was look at the junior college, community college movement in America, first on a national scale, then on a statewide scale, then on a more local scale. And it's very fascinating. And I think that the Mississippi Junior Community College experience may be the best success story in our state educational history. It's the one thing we really did right from the start. And I'm going to get way ahead of myself here. I want to tell you about 3 people. I interviewed a lot of people for this history, many of whom are no longer with us. 3 of them were, when I interviewed older people, now my age, I heard so many times, if it hadn't been for the junior colleges, I don't know what my life would have been. And that's what they meant to so many people. Ray Marshall in Jackson was so poor, his family was so poor that they put him in an orphanage. They couldn't feed him in the 30s. 16 years old, he joined the Navy, served in the Pacific, came back, went to Hinds Agricultural High School in the 10th grade. His teachers noticed that he was fairly bright, so they moved him to the junior college. Ray Marshall became Secretary of Labor under Jimmy Carter. earned a PhD from the University of Texas, Austin, and the one element of the business school at Texas Austin is the Ray Marshall School. Second one's Ted Thrash, Edsel Thrash. He was from a hard scrap dirt farm outside Lake Mississippi. Also served in the military, went to Hinds, became an All-American boxer at 135 pounds. Went to LSU, was an All-American boxer at LSU, earned a PhD, had a degree in engineering, and became the president of the Mississippi, public higher education. A third one was Clyde Muse. Clyde Muse was raised essentially in poverty. He graduated from Sebastopol. They call it Sebastopol, and there's one in Russia. It's called Sebastopol. Nobody in his family had ever been to college. He had no idea of college. His high school football coach, our basketball coach, took him to East Central, introduced him to the president, said, this guy can play basketball. President said, would you like to go to college? He said, I don't have any money. That was common. We'll put you to work. They made him play football. He hated it. He had never played football. And his job was milking cows, 5 o'clock in the morning, and again in the evening. One night he's in his dorm room and a pair of tennis shoes came flying in. Basketball coach there said, you don't have to play football anymore. You're a basketball player now. Now, the point is, where would those people have been without the junior colleges? And that's, I heard so many times, if it hadn't been for I don't know what my life would have been like. And that's still true for a lot of people. Now, let me see if I can get this to work. Okay, you know this. These districts were drawn up basically in 1928. We're approaching 100 years. They've changed a little bit, but there are 14 districts that all eat well. I'll tell you in a minute. Now notice on the east side where it says 1, that's Meridian. Merdin. I've been to Meridian. I didn't know there was a Meridian. And that was on the state website. They fixed it. But, okay, there's a test at the end when I get finished, so keep up. All of these started out as one campus institutions. Hinds now has 6 campuses. Gulf Coast was the first to have campuses away from the main campus. Now, where's the main campus northwest? Uh-oh. You can. Where? Nope, wrong one. Yep. All right, northeast. Itawamba, Fulton, East Mississippi. Okay, my whole life has been Scoober, located in Scoober. Holmes, Hinds, Raymond. All right, we're getting pretty good. East Central, Decatur, Colin, Wesson, I'll help you out here, Jones, Ellisville, Southwest Summit, Pearl River, Poplarville, and Gulf Coast Perkinsons. Now, what do all of those have in common? There was, thank you. He's my cousin, by the way. He's smart. They're all small towns, and the Mississippi system is largely different in that reason, that everyone except Meridian started out in a small town, and that's where their main campuses remain. Now, why the devil did that happen? Here's why. Where's my water? Now, oh, thank you. Got a martini? Hinds County, that's us. This may look familiar today. Primarily agricultural, undereducated. Some towns had adequate schools. Rural students had very little opportunities for even a high school education. All right, some examples. Raymond, nice looking school. And I've looked at that, and I've tried to blow up. It appears that they're watching a dog fight somehow. Clinton, nice facility. Never have found out where that was. Utica, that's pretty grandiose. Byram. Now, I want you to now show you a close-up at the far left of that photo. What do you see? Mule. What was that? A school bus. That's a 1917 school bus. A donkey. Now, let's get out of the towns. I'm going to show you some photos of schools, public schools in Hinds County. And thank goodness the Hinds County superintendent in 1917 published a pamphlet that showed pictures of every school in the county, not the city schools, just the county schools, with a valuation and so forth, and that's a school. That's where farm students had to go through maybe 7th grade. And my favorite, that was just outside Utica. Now, what's something you might have noticed about all of them? Don't be shy. They're all white. There was one exception, real exception, in, never mind, Utica, which was founded in 1903 by William Holtzclaw, which was an institute for black students. Really, in Hinds County, outside of Jackson, that was the only opportunity to get an education. Utica became public in 1948, added a junior college curriculum in 1954, merged with Hinds Raymond in 1982, and now is the Utica campus of the Hinds Community College District, but it was a blessing. Okay, to help rural students, in 1908, the legislature passed laws to establish agricultural high schools. Actually, the first law passed in 1908 said for white students. That got shot down. So they passed an amended version the next year that said just students. And there was, let's see, there were about 53 ag high schools. How many of them were for black students? Oklahoma. About 15. Oh, God, Dan Hogan, where'd you go to high school? Forest County Ag High School. All right, of these 51, there are 2 that remain. Forest County? Itawamba. Who said that? You get 100. Yeah. So out of 50-odd ag high schools, there are only 2 that are left. My own parents went to an ag high school in Clark County. My father and his 4 brothers, and so they went to Clark County Agricultural High School, which was within walking distance. Town of Raymond purchased land to create an ag high school in 1916. Construction began 1917. It was one of the last to be established. First was 1909, Jasper County. That was the first building. That was the administration building, classroom building. Burned in 1950. Hinds had a bad record of buildings burning. Women's dorm. This is the only surviving original structure. It's now Pickett Residence Hall. Oops. Boys' dorm. It was just called the men's dorm until World War II. Anybody know what it was called after that? Shangri-La. Who answered that? Because during the war there was such a shortage of men students that the ground floor was populated by women, and they got mail addressed to the men's dorm. They didn't like it. So they had a contest, and they voted to change the name to Shangri-La, a place of repose, peace, friendship. It was a joke. Would someone, let's see, is there a clock nearby? Tell me if I get long-winded. Barn, boys' dorm, Shangri-La. Bedroom. And in my book, I have a little section on the new dorms at Hinds, and it has the square footage and the... Now, when I was a freshman in college at that great institution in Starkville, I had 2 large, smelly roommates. There was one phone in the hall and a bathroom that we all had to go to, and I think 3 showers. These kids, they lived better than I did till I was 30 years old. They have private rooms with private baths and so forth. Oh, there's one that says Mississippi A&M up there, which became Mississippi State. A student, this was for the high school and later for the junior college, there were certain things you had to bring. You had to bring a pillowcase, a sheet, it just says one, a glass, take medicine. That was about it. Well, dorm sitting room, that's from a women's dorm. And to jump ahead a little bit again, Visitation was allowed on Sunday afternoons between male and female students in the dorm and on the patio, the porch, supervised, chaperoned. That was it. Dining room. And again, that's very typical of all the high schools and community colleges. Faculty sat at every table. I'd hate to do that. All right. What happens to the ag high schools? There were over 50 of them. Oops. In 1918, the legislature passed a law that stated that any two or more public schools could merge. They would consolidate. Now, if you look at a map of, let's say, Hinds County or any Mississippi county in, say, 1910, you might be amazed at how many schools there were. Why? How did you get to school? You walked, or maybe had a mule. By 1920, you have this consolidation of schools merging, and they had to provide transportation for anybody that lived 2 miles or more away from the school. They had to provide bus service. It might be a mule. So the ag high schools were sort of losing their clientele. These were dorm students for the most part. That was their opportunity. A good many of the ag high schools closed in the 1920s. Their enrollments had dropped. Visionary leaders. Now that's an obsolete term, I think. Well, they saw a solution to save the ag high schools. What's that? Add a college curriculum. In that way, you would draw students who otherwise would never have had the opportunity to get college education. You would keep up the enrollments of the ag high schools, and several of them were saved by that. Okay, 1922 legislation that enabled the junior college, well, ag high schools rather, to offer college courses. At Hinds, they offered the freshman level of course, and they kicked out the 9th grade. When they added the sophomore year, they kicked out the 10th grade. Somehow it crept back in. And the Hinds Ag High School was still in business in 1958. And at that point, the legislature essentially said to the junior colleges, make up your mind. Are you a high school or are you a college? And you're not going to mix it. I think I just said that. One of the real movers in this movement to add college courses to the ag high schools, Knox Broom. Brother was the first president of what became Delta State. He was a state superintendent at one time and wound up his career at Hinds as a legislator. Okay, 1922, the fall, Hinds offered a The freshman level of college courses became known by the cumbersome title of Hinds Agricultural High School, Junior College. All right, this led to some confusion and a little bit of ugliness because Pearl River had offered college courses the year before. So Pearl River claims to be the first junior college in the state. Well, it wasn't legal. They taunted the law. So Hinds and Pearl River are the first two legal junior colleges in the state. I just had to do this. 1923, there was a national convention of junior colleges in Jackson. Hinds was one of the hosts. Somebody asked me if they ate at the Mayflower. No. This was in support of junior colleges. The most bizarre thing the chancellor of the University of Mississippi was all for junior colleges so they could prevent degenerate dancing for a couple of years. Now, then they could go to Ole Miss and get a scholarship for degenerate dancing. Robert E. Lee Sutherland, first president of Hinds Junior College, his father had ridden with Nathan Bedford Forrest, one of the early members of the Klan. Sort of an interesting story about Robert E. Sutherland. He was a big Bilbo supporter. Bilbo, governor, U.S. senator, flagrant racist, was called by some the worst senator in the history of the United States. He got a master's degree in 1928. Bilbo was elected governor in his second term, and he appointed Sutherland as the president of MSCW. What's now MUW until they may change the name to something, I don't know what. He had just got the master's degree and he became the president of a state university. Every university and college in Mississippi lost its accreditation, except Delta State and Alcorn. So he presided over MSCW when it lost its accreditation. When Bilbo left office, he was promptly fired. Then he shows up as president of Pearl River Junior College. Now, where's Pearl River? Poplarville. Who's from Poplarville? Bilbo. He got him the job. This was a new administration building. That's what happened to it. It burnt to the ground, probably from a lightning strike. Okay, for the Ag High School or junior college, tuition's $4 a month. No, for out of county. I understand it's gone up. Room and board was $13 a month. You could work, and it was almost expected of the junior college student to work on the farm or on the campus, 15 cents an hour. In the Depression, it went down to 12 and a half. Students with the written consent of the president could go home one weekend a month at the request of their parents. And I wonder how many parents requested or just no, stay there. Academic requirements were basically the same as today for a freshman curriculum. Let me make this point. In 1963, maybe two, Hinds Junior College had 750 academic students. How many made all A's? One. One student out of 750 made all A's. In the fall semester of 2017, in the Hinds Community College District, 1 in every 6 students made all A's. I didn't know anybody that made A. Good old days. They could spell and handwrite. Old Fordson tractor. We actually exported tens of thousands of them to Russia in the 30s, 40s. The campus was almost a universe into itself. It had entertainment, it had education, it had athletics. Point this out. A few years ago, I read an article about community college football, and I believe this figure is correct. There were about 70 community colleges in the whole country that had football teams. 14 of them are in Mississippi. Why is that? But they started out as high schools. They started out as high schools who played each other. And when they started adding the college curriculum, it was just more or less natural to bump it up to that level. Now, I always think of the chancellor of Ole Miss when I look at this, that he obviously had lost his argument about degenerate dancing. Okay, the good old days. Anybody talk? You had to be kept free from the immoral and vicious, and if a student's attitude was inharmonious, they were expelled. They didn't have to commit any specific act. They were just kicked out. It sort of reminded, when I was a sophomore in Starkville, I had 2 roommates in that fall semester. One flunked out and the other 2 got expelled. I won't tell you which ones. Okay, these were the 4 rules of the high school and the junior. No gun shooting. Sort of, seems like that would just sort of be understood, you know. Don't be shooting guns. No smoking. That's in the catalogs. No hanging out. Street loafing. If you wanted to go from Raymond to from the college to downtown Raymond, you had to have permission to go do your business there and then come back. Don't even think about it. Don't even. Church, it was compulsory. It's in the catalog and was in the catalog until 1971. It was totally ignored for decades before that. Every Sunday morning, the student body would gather out in front of what became Kane Hall and go uptown and go to church. That was just understood. It was compulsory on Sunday and recommended on Wednesday. Now, that reminds me of something else. When Hinds offered the sophomore year for the first time, 1926, for the first time they offered courses in Bible. The next year, they offered 3 courses in Bible for every denomination: Baptist, Methodist, and Presbyterian. Because you know what happened was the first year, the minister was Baptist, and the Methodists didn't like it. So they had to add, if you were not one of those, you could pick which ones you wanted to be. Now here was what time is it? Big problem that Mississippi was facing. There were 50-odd ag high schools, and every dadgum one of them wanted to become a junior college. If they did, well, Iowa was sort of the case that was looked at. In Iowa, practically every county had an ag high school that became a junior college. The average enrollment was 20, and the tax base was small. So we were smart. Now, the president of Pearl River wrote an article, Birth Control for Junior Colleges, which was sensational, because birth control, it was not something you said in public, but he said we need birth control for junior colleges. So, birth control. In 1928, the legislature created the districts that we saw earlier that are basically the same today. You could only have one junior college in each one of those districts, and they could not be within 20 miles of a university, so that they would not compete with, let's say, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Southern. The legislature also started a junior college commission. And for the first time, the legislature made an appropriation to the junior colleges. Now, oddly enough, the governor was Bilbo, who was a huge supporter of junior colleges, and legislatures later went to Bilbo and asked if he would agree to appropriate X amount of money to the junior colleges. He said, I forget the amount, $100,000, I'll make it up. He said, no, make it $250, and I'll agree to that. So for the first time, you have a junior college commission, junior college districts, you have state support. Consequently, Mississippi had the first system of junior colleges in the country. I said that's one thing we've done right and continue to do right. Okay, little test. I don't hear anybody. $15 if you count Meridian. You all flunk. What's the only municipal district? Meridian. Okay, this is a little outdated, but in 1987, the junior colleges changed their name to community colleges, except one. Jones! That's right. And the story, unverified, is that Jones Jr., it was known as JC, and they didn't want to give that up. So they stayed JC. What is it now? Jones College. I don't think the association recognizes that. Is that right?
State law still has JC.
Oh, really? Well, this is the free state. They live out, they live in swamps. Oh, I must be done. Questions?
And we have time for questions. If anybody has a question, you can raise your hand and we'll bring the microphone to you. Question in the back.
What's the total junior college enrollment in Mississippi?
Good evening.
It's about
Let me
150,000.
ask you a question. You said it was a blessing for Raymond, for Hinds Community College in Raymond to merge with Utica Junior College in Utica. My question to you is, how is it a blessing?
I'm not
me
sure
finish.
that's what I said, and if I said, I misspoke. What I said or intended was that Utica was a blessing to Hinds County.
You said Utica was a blessing?
Yes, sir.
I can't see how, because when in 1903, W.H. Holtzclaw gave that property to build a junior college campus at Utica. Now, Utica Junior College had everything, mechanic, they had trade building, they had cosmetology, and they merged with the one in Raymond. I feel like that was a discredit to W.H. Holtzclaw and the school at Utica, because Utica had full staff, had a lot of students, and at Raymond, they were losing the Negro children from Raymond down to Utica, because the price that you had to pay to go to Raymond was much cheaper than you had to pay in Utica.
What's your question?
My question was, how could you say that it was a blessing?
I said that
Raymond-
Utica was a blessing to Hinds County. The reason Utica merged with Hinds was a court order. And it was a very difficult process. A lot of compromises had to be made. Yes.
But that was the Board of Supervisors of Hinds County, along with the state of Mississippi, did that.
Okay, the Utica by the 1940s was about to go broke. The Board of Trustees donated Utica to the county, the Utica campus. So it became a state institution rather than private. Now, a little interesting point. Utica added the freshman level of college courses in 1954. What happened in 1954? Brown case. And that was essentially to ensure that black students would not try to go to Hinds, that they would go to Utica. Separate, it was separate but equal. It was not equal, but that was the reason. Have I answered? We okay?
My question is similar to the question raised by the gentleman in the rear.
Yes, sir.
I looked at your title and you talked about the system of junior colleges. And when I look at and think about a system, I think about the separate but equal. But as you indicated, it was always separate but not necessarily equal, as you just talked about in the case of Utica.
That's correct.
And I think you asked something about how many districts were there. When you go back to your map, you had those 14 districts, I think.
Yes,
And
sir.
I noticed there was one, just the word Coahoma was out there. And it appeared that, so far as the system was concerned, Coahoma was not really a district in the same sense of the word. In 1995, that's when Coahoma finally had legislation passed that provided some actual support that was required. Also, in addition to Coahoma and Utica, there used to be something called Harris Junior College, which was in Meridian. Harris went out of existence because when the desegregation orders came for that county, Harris was simply folded into Meridian Junior College. So we're talking about a system, but not a real system in the sense of being separate but equal. Because throughout most of that period, almost half the population was black, but we were really talking about only one kind of a district. And that one kind of a district was in Hinds County, because clearly Harris was not, and clearly Coahoma was not. And now you just have Coahoma in existence. And I guess my larger question was, it's in two parts. Explain why you think it was really considered as a system, and do we normalize things simply on the basis of white supremacy and forget about the black population?
I can't disagree with you. Well, I think you have to put it in perspective of 1928. The legislature was 100% white. The governor's a white racist. That was life then. And you're right.
I probably misunderstood you. My ears don't work as well as they used to. But you were talking about Bilbo
Yes.
going to Hinds,
No.
going to. Which
He was
one?
from Poplarville, where Pearl River is.
So that's where he went to college.
I don't know if he went to college.
Well, I guess I misunderstood you because I thought you said he had a master's.
No. No.
I've never heard
The
of
president
somebody
of
with a master's.
Hinds, Robert E. Lee Sutherland, got a master's degree at Sewanee. Right, and Bilbo hired him. He fired the president of MSCW and made Sutherland the president, who promptly got him on probation or lost their accreditation. And then he gets fired and turns up as president of Pearl River, which just not coincidentally was where Bilbo lived. So there, yeah.
Oh, well, Ben, it seemed like, by the way, I'm one of Ben's former students. It seemed like the community college movement in Mississippi, when you see how it grew out of agricultural high schools, I mean, would you say it in a way was sort of kind of filled in some of the gaps that the land grant colleges didn't fill in? You know, the land grant colleges gave opportunities to many people to get a college education, but there were still more who needed that. Did that somehow fill in some gaps?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I told you that my father and his 4 brothers went to Clark County, Mississippi State. After that, they went to land grant colleges. So well, I think you have to look at this too. The junior college movement in Mississippi was not anticipated. It just was a reaction to the events of the time, which turned out to be a brilliant idea, I think. The community college movement, get off track a little, probably started in 1901 when, of all things, the University of Chicago established a junior college in Peoria, which apparently played fairly well. But their idea, the president, Harper, been hired by John D. Rockefeller and given unlimited budget. His idea was that American education should be based on the German system. First 2 years of college, don't let them on campus. That college started your third year. And so the intent, well, the elitist. A totally separate movement was what happened here is populism, to make education, well, affordable, of quality, and convenient. And it still is. It's the same thing. Has been for 100 years. So, is that?
Is the junior college enrollment increasing or decreasing?
I don't, let me ask.
It is decreasing.
Well, I tell you, hey, let me get a microphone for the question and the answer. Hold on.
Is the junior college enrollment in Mississippi increasing or decreasing?
If I may, I would say it's stabilizing. Coming out of the recession 10 years ago, we were witnessing decreases, and now it's normalizing. We educate and train about 150,000 people each year in academic, career tech, workforce training. And so I would say it's what we would consider to be normal at this point. We are concerned about the enrollment cliff, obviously, that y'all have read about and heard about at the K-12 level. That'll impact all post-secondary institutions, not just community colleges, but that's something coming down the pipe. And some community colleges are going through right now. So.
Let me make one last. The word community is a much better term, thank you, than junior. Truman Commission on Education in 1947-48 really enhanced the term community college, that this is what a great deal of education should be based on. And it should be broad. Community, we serve a community. If the community needs job training, we provide job training. If the community needs English and chemistry, we provide that. And we do a damn good job of it. If you look at, well, let's say the, what's the Continental Tire. If you look at Nissan, they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our community college. That's what it's worth.
Excuse me, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but when I started as an education major in 1953, I always thought that the best junior college systems were either either California or Florida. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, it wouldn't be Florida, but California had one of the oldest, one of the very oldest. And oddly enough, a lot of the movement in California came from Stanford to establish, they wanted to keep freshmen and sophomores off the main campus. That's a question I don't really have an answer to, I'm sorry.
We have gone a little past the top of the hour, but there was good conversation, good questions. You want one more? All right, hang on, we'll do one last question here.
Just real quick, I was going to ask about Natchez College. Are you familiar with Natchez College? Natchez Junior College?
No. Is it a private or is it a campus? I think it's a campus of Colin. Yeah, it's a campus of Colin. And like I said, most of the community colleges now have multiple campuses.
Actually, up until 1989, it was a black college.
Private? Oh, well, there was a plethora of private junior colleges at one time. So,
Before we wrap up entirely, though, let me put our friends from the Ag Museum on the spot because they brought some literature for an event they have this weekend.
Amy Clark, I'm the educational interpreter over at the Ag Museum. We do have some information over on the table. Saturday, we are having a living history interpreter from Grand Rapids, Michigan come in to speak about women in World War II. It's going to be a really, really interesting program. It's going to be at 11 o'clock there at the Ag Museum. It's included with admission. We do have some information over there, some flyers. I think half of you in here know me, so if you do have questions about that, we're going to be around, and I'll be glad to answer that and kind of tell you a little bit about what she's going to talk about. So, but we would, it is, but we would absolutely love to see everybody there. Thanks.
I know we didn't get to everybody's question, but Ben, I'm sure will be glad to talk to you over here. We have copies of a book, of his book, A Century of Service, for sale. $25? $25. They'll take care of it.
cheap.
They bargain at twice the price. I hope that we see you back here next week when we'll have Stephen and Noah Satterstrom talking about Noah's fantastic new exhibit that's up at the Art Museum. Thank you all for being here today. Help me thank Ben Fatherree one last time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, man. We'll get this off.
All right.
Get you out of here.